All the way to glue factory. Welcome to the 73rd video in our series about Unix tools. In this video, I'll show you the makefile that does the build of the shared library application shown in video number 72. This makefile uses two features you haven't seen before. .suffixes, which will disable all built-in automatic suffix rules for safety, and .PHONY, which will mark some targets so that they are not considered files. And those targets will always be run if their name is given, even if a real-life file with the same name as the target exists on the disk. Some other things to notice include using an rm_f variable in the clean and disk clean target rules, and that we do not strip the shared library. Also, a statically linked application cannot use shared libraries, so the static flag is gone from the LD flags, compared to video 72. Okay, since AR and ranlib are not used, the AR and ranlib variables are gone. The fpic is required and tells the compiler to generate position-independent code. You can't make a shared library unless the code is relocatable, and to be relocatable code, that another name for that is position-independent code. There's a new variable ln_sf, which does a forced symbolic link, and by forced, I mean that it does the link even if it has to replace some existing file. ln-s will do the symbolic link, but if the file already exists, it will give an error. But by using the sf, the force, you won't get the error. Finally, there's a new target in this makefile that didn't exist in the other one, called runit. And the reason it's there is because it will set the LD library path environment variable as part of the makefile, and then run the application as part of the makefile, so you don't have to set that environment variable by hand. Okay, fine. Let's see it. And if you exit, you'll see I need to do a clean. Okay, now we're ready. The makefile is called makefile2. Makefile by itself, that one is for the static library. Makefile2 is the new one that we're looking at today in this video that does the shared library. And I realize some of you are a little confused about shared library.so. I never heard of this. On Windows, they have a different name for it. They call it a dynamic link library, and they use a .dll. But the .dll on Windows and the .so on Unix do the same job. They do it different ways, but it's the same job. It's shared code that can be loaded in by many different applications so that you only have one copy in memory and you save memory. It also means that when you update the one copy in memory, all the programs get the updated copy, and you don't have to recompile them. With static libraries, if you change the static library, I told you, you have to recompile every single application that uses the static library, because the code lives in the application. With the shared library, the code stays in the shared library, and you don't have all those problems. You still have problems, but not those. So let's take a look. Since we don't have a static library, we don't use AR, and we don't use ranlib, so those variables are gone. We need an ln-s with the force option. You might see it like this in a few places, but most people type that. So, great. Let's take a look. My compiling the individual objects for test it, Taylor sign, and factorial. You see they haven't changed. And you say, I thought you need fpic. Look at the C flags and then come up to the top and you'll see fpic is part of the C flags. So they are going to be compiled with the position independent code. Taylor sign and factorial are used to create libmylib using that special shared and setting the SO name that I talked about in the previous video. Then we need two symbolic links, and you could see that that sets the symbolic links that we want the way that we want to. We have the real, once the real shared library is built, right? This guy, my highlighting is really giving me a hard way to go today. All right. This one shows up here, and so if you rebuild this one, that becomes a dependency, and it will run this link, which will link this guy symbolically with this name, and that's going to be the dependency here, which will force this guy, right, to be symbolically linked with this, which gives us our two ln minus sf lines that we needed to make the shared library usable. Then once all that's there, right, I have this symlink, which is a dependency here, and I've got the test it here. Once I have those two things, then I can actually do that compile of my application. I need the link flags, which must include fpic, and you see they do. And then I use the current directory to look for the library at link time. And this is the library I'm looking for. And if you see mylib, remember you're looking for lib, whatever that is, .so, which should be a symlink, and it is in this case. Finally, what's in here? Well, remember we had to do the -lm, and you see there it is. So, cool. Here's the new target runit that I talked about. And runit does just what we did by hand in the last video. It sets the LD library path to the current directory, and so that tells the system that if you can't find some shared library on the system path, look here. We spelled it out last time, but you can use a dot and it'll work. And then it says run test it, and it makes sure it uses a // to run the test it in this directory, not some other test it that's on the path. And it won't do a run it until test it exists. So that makes sure that if you didn't build test it yet, it will build test it before it tries to run it. The PHONY down here marks several targets, and it says even if there's a file called clean, I don't mean the file, okay? This is a phony target. Phony is another word for fake or artificial. And it says I don't want this target to be a file. And since it has no dependencies, if I say make clean, you run this, you don't look for a file. Okay, and disk clean and run it are all like that. You'll see a new target all, and that's from tradition. Tradition says you should have all as your first target, and then you list one or more of your applications here that you need. Wow, that's a lot of talking. Let's see if this thing actually works. So we can do a make -f makefile2, and then let's do a run it, which should trigger a build, because run it depends on test it, and test it's going to be a full build. And you can see it did the full build, and then it ran this library. If I run it again, we don't need to rebuild it, so it just runs the program. if I make some change somewhere, let's say I change something in Taylor sign.c, and I said, yeah, I'm looking at this. I'm not super happy with this. Maybe I'm going to remove these comments. Clean up the code a little bit. If I do the run it again, you'll see it's pretty smart. It rebuilt Taylor sign, and then it had to rebuild the shared library because Taylor sign changed, but it did not rebuild factorial. It set the symlinks again, because if you change the shared library, you need to reset the symbolic links. Finally, it had to do the build. You can't skip this, right? But it didn't recompile tested.o. So the only thing it recompiled was the Taylor sign.c. This is a link. This is a link. And finally, it stripped it and ran it, and it worked. So we only build what we have to build, and it's smart. The first time, it builds everything because you didn't have tested. But the next time, it's smart. If you only change Taylor sign.c, it only rebuilds one file, Taylor sign.o, and then it does the links and the symlinks that are required. I hope you begin to see the value of creating the makefile. Yes, it's a hassle the first time to make it from the tree, or the graph, I should say. You have to draw the graph, and then you have to type in the makefile and put the rules in. But after that, it makes life much, much easier. And that's the end of this video, because we're out of time. So, I hope you come back next time, and we'll do something completely different. We won't be working on this application again for a while. Certainly not in the next video. And we won't be doing make. So please come back for our next video, and we'll do something different to give you a rest from make and GCC. Thank you for listening.